Turn to our guest legal analyst, still with us in Chicago, criminal defense attorney Matthew Fakhoury, and I'd now like to welcome in Los Angeles, California, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Ambrosio Rodriguez. Ambrosio, let me start with you, if I could, please, sir. Thank you for joining us. Just talk about, if you would, please, your opinion of the prosecutor's demeanor and approach in introducing the exhibits into evidence.
It seemed, look, I hate to criticize other people, but it seemed a bit flat, and he seemed kind of put off or annoyed by having to do, what I think is a very important part of your job as a prosecutor, which is kind of introducing evidence that you are hoping will lead to a conviction.
All right, what do you think, Matthew? And it may seem a little tedious to viewers as they're watching, but again, I think that you mentioned earlier the reality of a prosecutor has to introduce in the correct way all of the evidence before it will be admitted and the jury can consider it.
Correct, yes. So I think she went about it fine. I mean, this isn't exactly the most entertaining part of the trial, if that's, a word to use to describe it. She has to basically check off what she needs to for foundational purposes, for evidence purposes, for collection of the evidence, and to show the jury that it was collected and maintained in the appropriate way. Sometimes, unfortunately, something like this has to just be done, and it can't really be done in a way that's quite as, like I said, entertaining or attention getting that maybe as some of the other parts of a trial, like a cross-examination, or when the defendant herself testifies, if she does testify. So I think she did a fine job. Again, it's just something she has to do that unfortunately doesn't have a lot of creativity to it.
And we are expecting the defendant to testify. Certainly that will be emotional, but also the couple's two children, minors at the time, teenagers, are expected to testify as well. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a short break here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Are you able to remove the item? And is that Ms. Redlick's black shirt that was collected from her at the hospital?
It was.
We'll see if there's any damage on that, specifically if I can draw your attention to the right, where your right hand is. Right under the neckline. So what I'm looking at is right here. You see any tearing in this? Can you show that to the jury? And that shirt's been in either your own possession or at least possession of the police department ever since it was collected?
I can check, sir, but it's been opened by someone else as well.
Do you know when that was?
I haven't checked yet, sir.
Does it say on there?
So this was also processed by FDLE.
Okay, so you've already answered that on direct. But it's been in the possession of law enforcement since it was collected on January 12th.
Yes.
You were there with Ms. Sundval the entire time during the search warrant in the afternoon?
No.
You were just there for part of it?
I was.
Okay. And you said on direct, I believe, that she was kind of leading the charge as to what's being photographed, what's being collected, and you were more just following orders on that?
That's correct.
The videos that you took, that was an undisturbed crime scene?
Correct.
So things that were on the video in certain locations, that's how they were found when you guys went in the door?
That's correct.
So the knife that you saw was just out in the open, out in the floor open like that.
That's correct.
Those towels were just out in the floor open at the base of the stairs?
Correct.
I don't have anything else, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. You may step down. State your next witness.
Still with us, we have our guest legal analyst, Matthew Fakhoury and Ambrosio Rodriguez. All right, Matthew, why do you think the state did not have this witness open all of the exhibits when they were admitted based on the foundation that was properly laid with him?
They're probably saving some of these exhibits to be opened or published to the jury at more of an opportune time. Right now, they're establishing the foundation of it, how it was collected, that it was always in their chain and care and control the entire time. It wasn't tampered with, in other words. Eventually, they will have this evidence published to the jury. It will be a little bit more dramatic. They'll, like we mentioned before, use a little bit more creativity and drama when they do open up these exhibits and show it to the jury, again, a more effective time for that.
And Ambrosio, I know you're a criminal defense attorney now, a former prosecutor. You deal with domestic violence cases. In this case, I expect that we are going to see allegations of domestic violence at the hands of the victim in this case, or the alleged victim in this case. But tell me, how frequently when you see domestic violence, is it only by one party, or could it possibly be by both?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, usually, or the overwhelming majority of domestic violence cases, there is one abuser. There are kind of a small percentage where it's a very toxic relationship where the abuse comes from, they abuse each other. But usually what happens, one of them, even in a toxic relationship, will have the upper hand. There's one stronger abuser. There's one person who has usually greater physical strength or is more vicious. That's not necessarily tied to gender, but usually it's the man.
All right, and we are going to show in live court. A detective is now taking the stand. We are going to squeeze in a break, but when we come back, right back to court to hear what does this detective had to say about what happened. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is a case with so many different details. The state of Florida versus Danielle Redlick, accused of murdering her husband, Michael Redlick. We want to get you back into the courtroom. The next witness has taken the stand. This is a detective that responded to the scene, the home, that next morning. She did say that she noticed eggshells on the driveway. After that, she is going to play the 911 tape of the call by the defendant in this case.
What do you need to leave by your medical? This is someone with a medical transfer for 1231 Temple Drive in Winter Park. One second. Alright, 1231 Temple Drive, right? Yes, ma'am. Yes. Okay, thank you. What's going on at 1231 Temple Drive? I believe my husband is deceased. Okay. And why do you believe he's deceased? Because I just, he's sick and he might have a heart attack in the room. Okay. Did you just find him? No, actually, not the last night. It happened last night? Correct. Okay. How's the husband? He's 55. Back there. because I know you said that you believed it happened last night. Did you see him last night? Was he okay or what?
He was not okay last night. We had altercations and stabbed himself, and I ran into the bathroom, and then when I came out, I tried to help him, and I thought he was just lying in blood.
You say you tried to help him out?
And then correct, yes.
All right.
And then I tried to help him, and I woke up, was sitting up next to him, and I've been trying to figure out what to do.
Right. I got you. I'll give you some help. So you all had an altercation last night, correct? All right. What's your name? Danielle? Are there any weapons on scene now?
Night.
A knife. He said he was 64, right?
65.
I'm sorry?
65.
65. So, okay. Go ahead and give me your first name again, because I want to call you name. Danielle. Okay, so Danielle, let me ask you this. So, did he stab himself last night? Did he pass last night? And you just didn't know what to do?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Were you all drinking?
He was.
You were?
Yes, he was. And altercation was the night before, too, as I left the house. And took my children with me, because he was dating them, too.
Were your kids safe last night during this altercation?
No, they were not. They were not here, and they're not here now.
And then you first said that you thought he had a heart attack. So do you think it was a heart attack, or do you think it was due to the fact that he passed away?
Probably the stabbing triggered it, I guess. I don't know. It's a shoulder wound.
You say it's a shoulder wound?
Right.
Okay. I'm just getting all this information. Okay. How old are you, girl?
45.
I'm just getting everything you told me for the call, okay? I have multiple units for the call meeting. I have to leave everybody. Give me your husband's first name. Michael, from the Western.
R-E-D-L-E-C-K.
What is it, your bedroom?
5153.
You and him here right now, right? So your children are with you, right? Okay.
No, they're not.
Can you go ahead and move that knife away so my units will be able to get in there? Are you able to put that?
What now?
Where's the knife?
Oh, in the kitchen.
Okay.
She worked in that area. She spent about years.
Danielle, what's her last name?
Redlick, R-E-D-L-I-C-K.
Go to verify your phone number for me.
Number 901-355-4234.
And what time do you think you all have to start altercation and those bad stuff?
I think it started around 10:30. He was actually choking me and trying to suffocate me first. I actually went for the knife. And he was screaming, what are you going to do? Give me a step. He grabbed it. Which when I told me that it didn't see emotion, and I ran out of the room.
So you say around 10:30 p.m.
I think,
And we need to go back and check on the work. Did you stay there?
I stayed in the bathroom for a while. And he came to the bathroom door and it was closed, and he was screaming stuff. I was just trying to stay away from him, and I heard some moaning and stuff, and I was scared that I probably went to check on him, and I could see that he was out of it. And I was slipping on his blood, and it was heavily bloody. So I tried to, he was already, I was trying to give him mouth to mouth.
Is there a reason why you didn't call last night?
Yeah, and then I was really afraid that he just like was bleeding. And I was just trying to get him to wake up. And I was exhausted after I fell asleep sitting up next to him. I tried to lift myself this morning. It doesn't look good. The emergency people are here.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let you go, okay? Go ahead and speak with them.
Pardon?
Go ahead and speak with them.
Can you speak with them?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Detective Ware, so that was the 911 call that led to your response, the other officer's response, FD's response. And you mentioned that Ms. Redlick, instead of making contact with her at that moment in time, she was going to be transported to the hospital.
That's correct.
Did you have anyone from law enforcement accompany her to the hospital?
I did. We had an officer that rode with her in the ambulance and also one that met her down there.
Was Ms. Redlick under police custody at this point in time?
No, she was not.
Were you responsible for making the request to have photographs taken of Ms. Redlick there on scene?
Yes, I was.
You mentioned that the process to obtain a search warrant was underway and you couldn't enter the home. What did you decide to do during this time period?
During this time period, I took that time to go down to the hospital with another detective to see if I could talk to Ms. Redlick.
What was the purpose of making contact with Ms. Redlick at this point?
We knew that she had 2 minor children, and we needed to find out the whereabouts of those children to make sure that they were safe, and also see if there was any relatives in the area that for next of kin issues. And really another reason is to find out what happened.
Okay. Who were you with?
I was with Detective Wagner.
Where did you end up making contact with Ms. Redlick at?
In the emergency room.
Kind of describe, you've seen the photos
Yes.
of Ms. Redlick. Is that the area that you made contact with her at?
Yes.
Was that interaction recorded?
Yes, it was.
Does this recording capture the entirety of your interactions with Ms. Redlick during this encounter at the hospital?
Yes, it does.
So there's no pre-interview or sort of, conversation that you had before you go on the record?
No.
It's all here in the recording?
Yes.
And showing defense counsel what's marked as states D for identification purposes? Prior to your testimony here today, did we have a chance to review the contents of States D?
We did.
And does it contain a fair and accurate depiction of the interview you conducted with Ms. Redlick at the hospital?
It does.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would seek to move into evidence what's marked as States D for identification purposes.
Any objection?
No objection.
D is admitted as the next numbered exhibit.
State Exhibit 33.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
This is Detective Ware, January 12th, 2019. The time is 13:06. The case number is 2019 460053. I will be talking to Danielle Redlick, white female, 11373, with Detective Wagner at Florida South.
Detective Ware, is this what is commonly referred to as a surreptitiously recorded interview?
Yes.
So you don't have your recorder out in Miss Redlick's face?
No, I don't.
Where is it?
It's in a folder. I have a folder that I bring with a notepad, and it's in there.
So have you started the recording before you're in her presence?
Yes.
And if we were to listen to the entire recording, are we going to hear sort of a section of you kind of walking and making your way through the hospital to gain access to her?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll try to jump to when there's actually something going on.
I'm worried about them. Are you? Is it okay for her to use these hands? Okay. I'm Detective Ware. With Untitled Chapter. President Fargo. Are you? I know that you have the doctors coming here from talking and stuff. Okay. I wanted to ask you just some information about the kids and that you have any next weekend or any family in the area or anything like that. Okay. I'm a little worried about them. Okay. The contact information for where they're at is
This is where it really starts to get good, because you heard the detective say, I was recording, but she didn't know I was recording her at the hospital. We are going to hit pause. You won't miss any of what the defendant said to the detective right here on Court TV Live.
3200 now.
Back to court. We did hit the pause button because the detective was just starting to play a recording of her speaking to the defendant while the defendant was in the hospital on the morning after the husband was found dead.
And from what I understand, your son is staying with Marcia and David. Okay, somewhere on Hall Road.
Yeah, off Paul, yeah. Their address is Lonsdale is their street.
Lonsdale?
Lonsdale, I think it's L.
Okay.
That's the street, on Hall Road, Miller Park.
Okay. Okay. And your son's name is Ryan?
No, that's his friend.
Oh, that's his friend's name. Sawyer? And your son's name is Y-E-R? Okay. And how old is he?
He's 10.
Okay. And your daughter?
Do you want it?
Okay.
15.
Okay. And she's staying at Mary's house? Okay. And you don't know Ashley is her mom?
Ashley's mom.
Okay. It's okay if you can't remember. We'll try to make contact with them.
Yes, I can't tell you. There's actually text messages with both of those individuals to me before I left the home today.
Okay.
Confirming that they were going to keep the history until further notice.
Okay.
So you can find both of them there.
Okay. So, you're not putting health plans at all, okay? I just want you to know that. We just kind of wanted some type of information as to what happened. If you're willing to talk to us, that'd be good. For us to know kind of what happened. But if it's, if you were...
Perfectly honest with that. I'm really concerned about my kids going to their death. What are you doing about that?
So, are there any, you don't have any family in the area or anything like that?
I do not. We are solo. He isn't either.
Okay, where's the closest family for him?
They have some cousins that occasionally visit or stay in Florida for part of the year. For me, it would be a violent thing.
Okay, is it okay to visit them?
Yeah. I understand the question, but
that's the doctor. I think the doctor, because of your injuries, I think they are looking at therapy. So, right now,
I just
okay. So is that what they said?
they initially said after the evaluation.
Okay, we were told the same thing, so it looks like that might be what they're doing. So maybe after you get into the facility and they, I don't know, doctors would have to tell you whether or not you can see your kids.
Well, who tells them this then? They can't just, my husband's gone.
So,
Still with us, criminal defense attorneys Matthew Fakhoury and Ambrosio Rodriguez. Let me start with you, Ambrosio. Final thoughts as we're getting close to the top of the hour about this trial so far.
Well, look, I think right now what the DA is doing is setting up the defense in terms of playing the 911 call and what she originally said to the detectives, which I think it's fair to assume she's going to say something different on the stand. And that's really what it, look, this whole case is going to come down to her testimony. If she survives cross-examination at the end of this case, she has a chance of being found guilty of manslaughter or justifiable homicide, but it's going to come down to her testimony.
And viewers have been tweeting a lot about this case and pointing out some things like waiting 11 hours before calling 911 after he'd been injured, and also the fact that on the 911 she was heard saying, oh, he had a heart attack. All right, Matthew, your last thoughts, please, sir.
I think this 911 tape is really going to be the crux of this entire case. I do think that she did not make very logical statements on this 911 call, and it is going to come eventually into this case to haunt her. I do think that if she does testify, there will be many inconsistencies that are pointed out. I think it's going to be a very hard case for the defense to win. They have an uphill battle simply because of this 911 case. And as a former prosecutor, I'm going to remind the jury of this every step of the way.
All right, what will this jury do? Thank you, Matthew and Ambrosio. And up next, we want to thank all of you for joining us. Michael Ayala in the anchor chair with more on the kitchen knife murder trial here on Court TV Live.